over at BangTheBook.com. We are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. Lots of great stuff going on over there. Have an event page or a landing page, whatever you want to call it, with all of our Super Bowl content so far. That's up on the homepage at BangTheBook.com. We've got lots of different prop opinions from multiple writers. We've got Danny Borges' power ratings piece in there, links to all the podcast segments. Very important to bookmark that. We'll keep updating that as we get more content here throughout the week. Kyle Hunter's daily college basketball picks, Parker Michaels' daily NHL picks, Alan Moody starting up with some first-half NBA and college basketball picks over at the website here today to go along with his daily NBA picks and his college basketball totals picks. So we got a ton of stuff going on over at the website. Please make sure you check it out. Go to YouTube, search Bang the Book, check out our videos, 2-1 on my free picks last night, including a dog winner on the Winnipeg Jets. So good video content over there as well. And, of course, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio, presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook. 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. Two guests on the program here today. We start things off with professional handicapper Bryan Leonard from WagerTalk.com. Bryan, how's it going today, man?
It's going great. Unlike the rest of the country, we've got a nice sunny day here in Las Vegas. And a lot of excitement now with all the props out. I've seen now that the casinos are starting to put out the player props, and that's always really popular with the wise guys because they like to play a lot of unders, and they like to get to them early. So we'll see how it goes. But, it's finally getting a little bit exciting out here in Las Vegas, and it's a nice change of pace here, and the next time it'll get like this will be in the NCAA tournament where it's just a nut house out here. So if you've ever thought about coming to Vegas and you don't like crowds, don't come out for the Super Bowl, don't come out for the NCAA tournament, and you should be fine.
Yeah, I've done one Super Bowl out in Las Vegas. It was way back in 2011. My dad and I were out there for the weekend. In fact, I was actually out there for a week, but we were out there. It was the Packers-Steelers Super Bowl 45. We just commandeered a couple of penny slots at the Westgate Superbook and, hit the button every now and then to play a little bit, just so nobody said anything to us. But, we were very fortunate to get a spot. I tried to get a couple of second-half plays in, and the line, for those that have never been to the Superbook, the place is massive. But the line was all the way back into the main casino, like almost back by the craps tables. So, yeah, if you don't like crowds, if you don't like waiting in lines, obviously with the apps now it's a little bit different. But if you are going out there as a tourist, haven't funded any of the apps yet, be prepared to wait a long time in those lines on game day.
It's definitely crazy. I've been in, when I used to run around and try to pick off some of these lines, I'd be in, for example, the Westgate probably has the longest lines out of all of them. But, before the apps, you would look at that line and you'd say, there's no way in hell I'm waiting in this line unless they've got some number that you're waiting on. And by the time you get to the front line, you don't know if that number's there anymore. It's totally different now with the apps. And if you are staying at one place, for example, an off spot or off strip spot, let's say the Hard Rock or the Westgate, make sure you fund an app. It's so much easier. You can get that bet and you know exactly at that time what the line is. A lot of these places out here, they're just slow at changing the lines on the board. We've even got some local places out here in Arizona, Charlie's, that kind of thing, where they don't have electronic boards and they do it by hand. And the worst thing you can do is get in a line and it says minus 150, and then you get up to the line and it's minus 200, and you've waited in line for half an hour and you can't even place a bet.
Yeah, or you place that bet out of spite and give up 50 cents worth of juice. But, yeah, it's very easy to fund those apps. I mean, anybody in the sports book can help you out with that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but, obviously when you talk about offshore books, there's rollovers and all that type of stuff. When it comes to the brick and mortars, I mean, even if you're there for 2 or 3 days, you set up that app, you're leaving, on Monday after the Super Bowl or on Monday after the first weekend of March Madness, you can cash out right away, correct?
Yeah, that's no problem at all. And in fact, if you had the time and you want to be rewarded for your bets, let's say you're a decent player, and let's say you bet $500 a game or whatever, go to a Stations property. There's a Palace Station right at the end of the strip down there on Sahara, and then you got to go down, over by the highway, not far at all, but they comp you on the app betting for sports, and no other place that I know of out here does that. So if you want to be rated and want to get some free rooms, sure, you're going to be a little bit off the strip, but at least you get free rooms, and they've got a free shuttle going to the strip all the time. That's what I would do. Do one of the Stations properties and get some comps for your hard work, and they add up. Let's say if you're only playing at the one place and you don't have the ability to run around town, those comps really add up, and hey, get a few free meals out of it, and who knows, you might get some discounts on future lodging. So that's what I would recommend for somebody out of town.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that too. I mean, if you're making a bet, if you're playing tables, if you're out there with your wife and she's playing, by the way, penny slot comp rates even are really, really good now for a lot of the major properties, Caesars, the M Life card through the MGM properties. Penny slot comp rates are actually really good right now. Not that I would know because I don't play them, but I have heard that from a lot of different people that, no matter what you're doing, I mean, hey, get something out of it. Get some kind of equity, something towards a meal, rooms down the line, as you mentioned. Hey, if you're going to put the money out, go ahead and use that player's card. Use it for, when you go dining, get your points, all that type of stuff. Very important to try and capitalize on everything that's going on out there. And it helps. It's something where you kind of feel like you're getting a little bit back as the consumer, despite paying resort fees or paying for parking or, any kind of food markup with a tourist destination, anything like that. Get a player's card and use the benefits that do come with that. And as you mentioned, with Stations doing that for betting on the app, that's a fantastic perk to be sure. The only thing is you do have to sign up in person to fund your account for those apps, and they only work inside the state of Nevada. So keep that in mind.
That's exactly right. And I know guys that will bet horses at Stations just for the extra comps, and they do it on the phone. And, I wouldn't recommend horse betting because of the hold. But if you're going to be a horse player, you can be a president or a chairman in no time. They don't have the greatest benefits, but you get free tickets to concerts, you get discounts in the restaurants, and go to the coffee shop, you save 20% or whatever. It all adds up. It's just like when you're betting sports for a living, that extra half a point adds up all the time. The extra reduced juice, that's things that you would do normally as a sports bettor. And hey, to be totally honest with you, a lot of the benefits out here in Las Vegas, unless you were playing slot machines, they've taken away a lot of the benefits, whether it be from changing the odds on getting a blackjack at the tables or putting an extra zero on the roulette. So any advantage you can get to get some of that back, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, and I know you're speaking from experience. You play a fair amount of video poker, and the comp rate for that is just it's anemic at this point in time. So whatever you can use to get a little bit back, definitely recommend that. So I guess before we talk about the game here, Brian, a lot of watch parties around town, plenty of different sports books. Westgate obviously at the top of the mountain here in terms of your watching experience, but you're gonna have a very hard time finding seats there. So are there any places that you would recommend for people that may be going out there for the Super Bowl or for March Madness here in about 6 weeks?
Yeah, most of the casinos will have like a general party where you pay $50, $75 or whatever, and you get we've been to a lot of them around town. Most of them have been comped, but that was years ago. I don't know if they do a lot of that anymore, but they will have parties where it costs you a certain amount of money. It's all you can eat, all you can drink. Now, obviously, you're not going to get high-end drinks, but, you get all the Bud Lights or whatever you want to drink. They've got pretty decent food. I'm not a food connoisseur like a Marco D'Angelo or anything like that, but, hey, they got the hot dogs, they got the nachos, the hamburgers. That's my normal menu. So I like it. But, yeah, I've had groups where I've had people from Cleveland come out with like 10 guys, and they didn't plan ahead on what they were going to do for the parties, and it's gotten to be a little hairy where they get down to the last day and everybody starts freaking out because it's so hard to get a seat in the sports book, and you've got to be a little bit prepared. So I would inquire if you're staying at a certain casino, that give them a call and say what are your options for a Super Bowl party. Most of the time, it's been years since I've been to any one of those. We used to get offers. In fact, we still do, to go up to Reno. But there's so many people that want to see the game. You've got to plan ahead. And I would say that for the NCAA tournament also, if somebody thinks they're going to run down there at 8 o'clock in the morning and get a seat in the sports book, it's just not going to happen. So you really got to be prepared ahead of time. But those parties that they have at the casinos are usually really nice. They give out some prizes, and it's a fun time. You're not going to overpay, but you are going to get a seat. So I know the South Point has one they advertised, and it's on the strip there a little bit south, closer to Henderson. But just try to be prepared ahead of time, and keep in mind everybody out there is coming to do the same thing that you are. So you want to be prepared ahead of time and realize what you're planning to do. Don't be a last minute thing. You're going to be stuck in your hotel room watching the game. So just plan ahead.
Yeah, and especially here in 6 weeks' time with March Madness. And by the way, conference tournament time, I mean, it's kind of March Madness light, but in some respects, that's an even better time to be out there because it doesn't have that same appeal or allure, but it still has all-day basketball for you to just kind of set up shop there in the sports book. So consider conference tournaments. If you are looking to go out there in the month of March, or maybe you're going to be out there for some sort of other reason, conference tournament time, probably a pretty good time to be out there as well. But as Bryan said, the most important piece of advice, plan ahead, figure out what you want to do so that you're not caught with your pants down once you get out there. I mean, of course, unless you're doing an activity where you want your pants down, and there are plenty of those out there in Las Vegas. All right, Bryan, let's talk Super Bowl 53 here. 2.5, still the number, pretty much market-wide offshore. Bovada's been dealing 3 basically all week long. I'm sure they're still money. Out there in Vegas, couple of places at 3, most of them at 2.5. Everybody knows by now that this line will get to 3, and everybody knows what will happen when it gets to 3. So anything change in your mind for the side for this game?
Yeah, it's interesting. We did a lot of videos with sportsbook managers this week. We did them on Monday so we can get more people in and get these videos up earlier. Most of them feel that it's not going to get to 3, which kind of surprised me because right now, Vegas Runner had a nice point when he was talking on the video, and he said, if you bet New England, you like New England. New England looked good last week, and they beat Kansas City. And, I was lucky enough to get a pick 'em as soon as that line came out because I thought it was going to go up, and it did. So if you're a New England fan, you're betting New England, you're laying the 2.5, you don't want to lay the 3. So, of course, 90% of the money coming in is on the Patriots. Well, in reality, it should be 90% on the Patriots because if you want the Rams, you want that 3. You're not going to take the +1. You're not going to take the +2. If you're an experienced gambler, you want to wait for 3. So everybody I know of out here in Las Vegas that bets for a living knows that the true line on this game should have probably been the Rams 1.5 or the Rams 1, which is what most casinos opened it at. And their power rating numbers say that the Rams should be favored. So they're waiting on the 3. The problem is every time it gets to 3, everybody bets on it. And in fact, the South Point the other day, they had it up for 17 minutes before it was knocked back down again. You would think money would come in on the Rams, but everybody that wants to bet the Rams is holding for the 3. So this is a really interesting way to enter the market. You've talked a lot of times, I've heard you talking about baseball and some other sports about when to enter the market. This is going to be interesting because the catching the 2.5, catching the 2, 1.5, really those are not key numbers. The key number you're looking at is 3. So we've got one side that wants to catch a 3, and as soon as they see a 3, they're going to bet it. It's going to be interesting how that works out because the sports books know right now that they've made the line. Basically, the Rams should be favored by 1, and right now they've got people betting New England -2, 2.5. They're getting the best of it right now. So how much are they going to want to give that back? Obviously, your goal for the most part is to try to balance action, but if you've got a line that's 3.5 points off of what you thought it should be, it's going to be interesting to see if they're going to go anywhere with this because they feel they've got the right side right now where they want to root for the Rams, and the Rams bettors are waiting for the 3. So I looked at some. Normally, when you're looking at these straight up lines here in the Super Bowl, you really get a good favorite line. For example, right now New England is minus 140, and I saw as high as plus 125 on the Rams. Normally, I always recommend betting the money line on the favorite and then taking the points on the dog. But now, since the line's under 3, you really don't have that kind of value right now. So it's really a wait and see when it comes to the line. If you could get a 3, I know a lot of guys are looking to get that 3. We'll see if it happens. I don't know if it's going to get there for an extended period. We haven't gotten the players from out of town in yet, and I would assume most of those will be on New England, although we are close to L.A. So if there's L.A. fans coming in for the weekend, that may change the value on the betting of this game. But it's the most interesting line move that I've seen since I've been out here, I believe. So at this point, I don't know where it's going to go, and I don't know if there's anybody out there that's going to tell you for certainty where it's going to go.
You know, you raised an interesting point, and this is something that, you know, I guess I didn't really consider until you started talking. You know, as you mentioned, I mean, this number probably about 3.5 points off of where it should be. The Rams should be a favorite. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, or maybe it was on Monday's show. The quant crowd is waiting on the Rams because the Rams are the better team. Full body of work, the Rams are the better team. They're the higher power-rated team, and the stats-minded guys also believe more in the Rams. So there are a lot of people waiting on that 3. You sort of wonder here, I mean, the odds makers and the risk managers have a lot of leverage right now because they can basically say, look, as you mentioned, we feel like we have the right, you know, we feel like we have the right side right now needing the Rams. So do they just force Rams backers to reluctantly take the 2.5 or take that, you know, maybe plus 125 money line, maybe hope you get, you know, Rams losing by 1 or something like that? Will they force that group into taking 2.5? That's a really interesting point that you raised there, and something that I didn't really consider until now.
Yeah, I thought about it, but I really didn't look into it that much. And Vegas Runner does a lot of offshore. He's got a group that he bets with and basically gives them accounts. And they were all looking to do the same thing. They're all trying to get. They thought that the Patriots would be popular, so they get in and pick them, and it's actually +1, like I said. And then they just wait and see if they could try to get the 3 the other way. But then when he mentioned it, I said, "Yeah, you're right." I said, "If the line's moving one way, you know, I just know from my own betting, regardless of what the sport is, if the line is moving where I'm getting a better line, why would I want to jump in now where the line continues to move in that direction?" And you'll hear, you know, the national publicity and national news on this. They don't really follow the betting patterns. They really don't know. All they know is everybody's betting the Patriots. So it's not because they're in love with the Patriots, just that nobody from the Rams side wants to jump in at 2.5 where they think they can get the 3. And that's part of betting. I mean, you look at percentages and you're trying to find out, you know, let's say that 3 is worth 10%, 11% here. You would be giving up 11% of your possible profit by pushing on the 3 as opposed to losing on the 3. So it's very important in these lines where you get a lot of the public involved, and the public, it's the one game where the public moves the line more than what the wise guys do. So it's a good week for betting if you know what the public's going to be on, and you know, it's obvious to me that the public loves the Patriots. And as you pointed out, the 2 big reasons are you've probably got the greatest quarterback in the NFL history, and you've probably got the greatest coach in NFL history. Other than that, everything else is for the Rams. Rams got better personnel. Rams got quicker players. Rams have played better on the field. Every other thing goes for the Rams other than Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. So, and Brady and Belichick get all the publicity, and they deserve it. They've been terrific. They may be the most boring couple of superstars as you've ever seen from a coaching and quarterback rating, but they've been great together. And the public knows them. They know New England. New England is the team that goes to the Super Bowl all the time. And if you're a casual fan, the Rams, what's are they in now? Isn't it the team that really didn't deserve to be there last week after the Saints game? It's sort of a spite bet. I called it a spite bet all week, where people don't think the Rams should be there, so why should they bet the Rams? Is all that together, it's just a very interesting line of what the lines makers are doing with it, and it'll be interesting how it comes back. I've heard some guys say it'll come back and close it New England 1. I've had other guys say that it's going to hit 3, it's going to close 3. We will have to see. At this point, I'm not buying the Rams at 2.5. It gets to 3. That's the number. Just about everybody's looking to bet. If not, then we'll have to see what happens.
Well, it's really intriguing because, and I'll probably talk with Brent, from the head risk manager from DSI Sportsbook, about this on tomorrow's recording for Friday's show. There are a couple of questions here. One of them is, are you okay with people betting or buying the Rams up to 3, paying minus 130 in juice, and taking the 3 that way? Another question is, I guess they assume Rams money will come in no matter what. Some very hard-line number guys may not play this until it gets to 3. Are you really comfortable going into the Super Bowl? If your line is Rams -1, and the game's a virtual coin flip anyway, are you really that comfortable being 80 to 85% exposed on New England to not make that move to 3? Are you that comfortable wanting the Rams side to potentially take a huge loss on the most bet game of the year? Does your prop handle cover enough of that for you? It is really fascinating for a variety of different reasons. And, I'll try to ask Brent those questions on tomorrow's recording, but that's something I'm wondering is, how long do you dig in, knowing how exposed you are on one side, to where maybe if you stay Rams 2.5, people don't come in on the Rams? And then if the Patriots win by a touchdown, it could be a bloodbath for you. It's very fascinating, to say the least.
Yeah, it shows what is different in the sports betting marketplace now as opposed to it was, let's just say back when the mob ran it. Back when the mob ran it, they were looking to make profit. Nowadays, it's all corporate. And if you're a sportsbook manager and you go in after this and you go to your bosses, they say, how the hell did we ever lose money on the Super Bowl this year for only the second time in the history of the Super Bowl? And you tell them it was because you held all the money because you got the better line. They're not going to understand that. They're just going to say, we've lost millions of dollars here and you're fired. I would not want to be in the position of the bookmakers when it comes to that. That's something that your common sense would tell you one thing, but it's sort of like being in the NFL, being an NFL coach, where you got the ball on that 1-yard line like McVay did a couple weeks ago. Common sense tells you the better play is to go for it on 4th down, whereas your bosses are saying, you better get those points right now. We don't know if we're going to need those points later. So it's very interesting. It'll be interesting to talk to the sportsbook managers after this is all over to find out what their situations were and how they approached it.
All right, so let's talk props here. We talked last week about your strategy and what you've had to change really over the last several years as the apps have become popular. You're not chasing things around anymore. Not as many middles out there either. So, in terms of the prop bets that you have made here for this Super Bowl, Bryan, what are some of your favorites? Whether they're player props, game props, or team props.
Yeah, I spoke last week, just keep it short, that basically I'm trying to have more no's than yeses and more minuses than pluses. And that's where the value is. And one of the things I looked at, I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it, is no missed extra point. That line currently, the general number is about minus 450. A lot of people don't want to bet 4.5 to win 1. But when you take a look at the mixed extra points in this situation, total number of touchdowns in this game is roughly 6.25. They're expecting anywhere from 6 to 6.5 touchdowns. And when you take a look at these two kickers, and I'm only going to quote the regular season numbers. I'm not even going to go in the playoffs. But these two kickers were combined 84 of 86 on extra points this season. And they were also 40 of 40 on field goals of 39 or less yards. So basically, you look at something where they're 124 out of 126 on the season. And like I said, with 6.25 touchdowns being scored, my number says this line should be 10 to 1. We're laying 4.5 to 1. It's not a huge number to lay as opposed to if you're taking a look at no safety or no overtime, that kind of thing. But I think this is a nice bet to make here. Plus, a lot of people have seemed to think this is going to be a lower scoring Super Bowl, especially in the first half. So that would mean less touchdowns also. So I'm going to play this one. It'll be the no missed extra point is the best number I could find. Another one is also a no defense for special teams touchdown. It's roughly about minus 260 in that general area right now. And neither team has had a punt block this season, which is one easy way to score on a special teams. Is you block the punt, get the ball, and you run it in right in for the touchdown. Both teams combined only allow one return of any type this season. That was in special teams, interceptions, fumble recoveries. So it's a small sample size. You've only got the 16 regular season games, but both teams have been very good on special teams and not giving up these type of things. So that's one thing I look to bet. Another that you can usually make good money on is they have the individual props on which players will score a touchdown, and they'll say, will this guy score a touchdown, yes or no? And for the most part, unless you get a blowout game that I believe we had last year or a couple of years ago, you're going to see a lot of no's. And you even see sometimes, what you really want in that situation, if a guy scores a touchdown early, you want him to be the guy scoring 2 or 3 touchdowns during the game. But if you bet the no on these players scoring the touchdowns, you're usually set up pretty well. Let's face it, most people want to see a high-scoring, exciting Super Bowl. The professional bettors that I know want to see a 3-0 final where you get a lot of punts, you don't score a lot of touchdowns, you don't get a lot of yardage. So anybody who's betting all the overs and the yardage, all the overs and the touchdowns, the longest this, longest that, which are the fun props that people like to bet, most guys I know want to be like the sports book. They want to bet the unders in those games. And like I said a minute ago, sports books have won all but one Super Bowl in the entire times they've had Super Bowl. So you want to be a negative person. You want to go for what people don't want to bet on. And from a sports betting standpoint, that's where you want to make your money. You'll end up laying more than you're taking, which is the minuses over the pluses. But in the long run, that's the way the professionals do it, and that's the way the professionals make money each and every year.
Well, I'm just looking here through the missed extra point prop. I'm actually seeing minus 290 over on the retro book over at DSI. So that's a big-time overlay there on the price that you calculated that out as. So, and that's the thing. I mentioned this on yesterday's show, and I guess I'll get your thoughts here as we finish up this segment, Brian. I talked about this with Rolf Michaels yesterday. A lot of those pluses in the Super Bowl, they're fun, and you want to have fun with the Super Bowl. That's what your goal is for this. If you want to make money for this, it's a little bit different. But the more pluses you have, the more gambling you're doing. The more minuses you have, the more betting you're doing.
If you're a roulette player and you like to sit there and watch your numbers come in and you want the big hit, if you play the actual slot machines where you push the button and you're looking for the cherries or whatever, you're looking for the big hit, those are the kind of people that are going to be playing the pluses. The guys who are math guys will be looking to play the minuses. And it's just something that, for example, I might have talked about this when it happened, but just a few years ago, they have who's going to score the first touchdown, how the first touchdown is going to be scored. And they had a guy, I believe it was in Westgate, who put $200 on 50-1 shot on the first score of the game will be a safety. And it went national. It was great news. Oh, man, look at all the money that guy made. That was a horrendous bet of not only getting a safety, when you figure the true odds of a safety is probably 15, 16-1 in a game, and then the guy's getting it at 50-1 on the first score. It was the most horrendous bet I've ever seen made. He was getting cheered by everybody around the country for getting that big hit. When in reality, it should have been a lot more than what it was. It was a terrible bet. But people look at the results as opposed to, what the numbers say. And that's what the sports books want. They've started posting out when guys hit an 8-teamer or a 10-teamer, and they want people to believe that that's a common occurrence. It doesn't happen very often, and sports books will love people coming in do parlays like that, and the professional bettors just stay away from it. The more teams you put in the parlay, the less the chances of you winning that thing.
Well, I really love this discussion, Brian. I think it was fascinating to dig a little bit deeper into the line with, some perspective that we really haven't talked too much about here on the show this week. And then obviously to take a deep dive into the prop bets as well. Bryan Leonard, professional handicapper over at wagertalk.com. What's going on over there right now at Wager Talk?
Like I said, I think we did 14, 18 videos, and we try to put the other side in. We try to have sportsbook managers and some of their bosses come in, and we've done that. And it's really nice to be able to ask, Chris Andrews, one of our buddies, was there this week, and try to ask him certain things on what he's expecting. Are they going to go to 3? If they do, when do you think that's going to happen? When's the money going to come in? It's just I've never worked on the other side, and I really wish I had. We have some friends who have done both sides. And one guy's down at Caesars right now, and he's done a tremendous job down there. But, if you want to see what the other side is looking at and how they judge the things, please watch these videos with the sportsbook managers. It's very telling, and you don't usually get a lot of that when you're listening to the radio.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love getting that perspective. I think it's something that's very unique, something that's very different, and something that can be very beneficial to bettors as well. I mean, every piece of information can be very important, especially when you talk about a big event like the Super Bowl. Bryan Leonard, Wager.com, at BLeonardSports on Twitter. Appreciate the time as always, man. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again here next week.
I appreciate it. Best of luck to everyone.